looks like just a little bit less than 5/16. Now if I can find a bit that is just slightly larger than this shaft, it'll be perfect. And this is it. It's a 19/64. Now, I might be able to find one that's even a little better yet, except my experiences with wood is after you drill a hole in it, it does for some reason seem to get smaller. Yeah, so we'll use this one, see how it goes. I've got lots of monkey wood. If this doesn't work out the first time, I'll do it again. Now I've turned this down to round on the other lathe, mainly because I didn't want to have to put my 4-jaw chuck on here. It's not that hard, but it takes time, and I'm probably a little bit lazy. Now I want to remember to put the end that's slightly cracked in the chuck. And anyway, once again, I can't talk and work at the same time. You're just going to have to bear with me here. Now this lathe has a number 3 Morse taper. The other lathe has a number 2 Morse taper. So I have to use an adapter here that steps it up from a 2 to a 3. Okay, that should be all right. I suppose this might have gone better if I had rehearsed it beforehand. I'm getting as short a grab as possible on here. You know what? Why don't I use one of my centering bits? Okay, this is just a little bit smaller than the drill bit. And I think it'll probably, this little point here, will be able to, dig out the center more accurately. In other words, the drill bit might have a tendency to wander a bit once it hits the wood, whereas I don't think this will as bad. So, let's make use of it. Okay, right there was where the live center went in from the other lathe, so I may as well just continue on there. This is just a cheap lathe. I can well imagine that a more expensive lathe would have a much better system of clamping the tailstock down to the rails. Anyway, it's good enough for me. In fact, it's too good for me. Now, some of you safety-conscious people will notice that I have a tendency to leave this key in the chuck. Well, this will not start with this open, and when you try to put it down, you're going to be reminded, hey. And I guess I better get some sort of dust collection going here. Well, it's not fancy, but it works. Now, unless you've ever used a lathe like this before, you will know that before you actually start it up, you want to make sure that the self-feeding is disengaged. If this lever had accidentally been knocked down and it was engaged, as soon as you start it up, this carriage is going to start working its way towards the chuck. And if it ran into the chuck, that would not be good. Okay, now we'll put in our 1964ths. 1964. My dad used to have a 1964 Ford when I was a teenager. And as I mentioned to one of the viewers here just in a comment, I will be 71 in about 4 weeks. Where did those years go? Okay. Now we'll go for a short grab. I don't like to have the jaws actually grabbing on the sharp part of the flutes here, but I don't think it's going to take it off center any worse than it would if it was back way up on the shank there. At least that's my opinion, and I could be wrong. Okay. This doesn't have to be real tight. Alright, let's give it a whirl. So now I know that the hole is about as centered as it can get, and it's gone in about 1 inch. I'm going to do this the fast way. Now this doesn't have to go in real far because I only need about maybe 3 inches of this here. So let's just, like I say, we're going to do it the fast way. I hope it doesn't catch on this thing here. I don't know about you guys, but I keep misplacing this thing. Even if it's in plain sight, I can't find it. Okay, we're through with this chuck. And we'll stick in the live center. Now maybe this one's a little bit too heavy duty, but and I hope it's not going to be in the way. It shouldn't be. And once again, when I crank it in there, I don't want to split the wood. All it has to do is just steady it. I've rearranged my dust collection system here a little bit. I just don't want it to be catching on the carriage as it moves. I think it's going to be alright. Okay. It's not perfect. I'd sooner it was more over here, but hey, at least it's going to get rid of the powder. And by the way, this wood, this monkey wood, it reminds me, I've said this before, it reminds me a lot of mahogany in that it is quite powdery. It's a lot harder than mahogany though. And also, this is the first time that I'm using my carbide cutter on wood. I would prefer to have had my high-speed steel because I think it's actually sharper, although it doesn't work as well in metal, of course. And yeah, see how this goes. And another thing, this is very, very, very slow. So I'll just get it going, show you how it's going to go, and then I'll turn it down to 1 5/8 of an inch, and maybe a slightly bit smaller, and we'll go from there. Okay, now you know what I mean when I say very, very, very slow. I probably could have been a little bit more aggressive in my cut there, but anyway. Now there's one thing for sure, and that is I don't want to be sticking my knuckles into this chuck. It's not as forgiving as the chuck on the wood lathe. This one has a lot of really sharp edges. Well, we're turned down now to just a tiny bit under 1 5/8. And I'll explain later why I want it a little bit smaller. Now I will try to get the smaller dimension, the 1 1/8, pretty well exact. At least so that it will fit the hole that I drilled in the pepper mill. Now in case I forget to mention why, here's why. When I drill this out, I do the big one first. Then I do the smaller one. Now, what if, when I'm doing the smaller one, it's not quite on the same axis as the larger one? It's off just a little bit. This one's perfect, and this one isn't? Well, it's not going to want to go together very good. So, if this is if this diameter here is just a little bit smaller than it needs to be, and the smaller one is just right, it's going to work together. It's going to work better. It's going to be turn more true. Maybe I'm not being too clear here. I know what I'm talking about. However, maybe you don't. I'm not always too clear. I'm going to run the parting tool in just under 1 1/8 of an inch here, so that the, well, I don't mean I'm going to run it in that far. I mean so that the diameter of the tenon that I want to turn later will be that size. Well, actually the tenon will be going this way. And then right here, approximately, I'm going to run it in again and go slightly more, so that the tenon would be, if I was to turn it down that small, that is, it would be just under 1 1/8 inch. The reason being is it's really hard to take down a tenon on something like this with a machine like this, because it will come up against the shoulder, and if you're not watching what you're doing, it'll all of a sudden dig in real bad, and you can have a disaster going. So anyway, that's why I want to have a groove right here so that I can work up to the groove. Works a lot better for me anyway. I've never taken any training with a machine like this, so I just sort of bumble through it. I find out what works and what doesn't work, and I've found that by doing it this way, it works really well. Well, it is very close now to, I think, what I want it to be. In fact, I'm hoping I didn't make it too small. I can always make it smaller, but I can't make it bigger. Well, let's see what happens here. Oh, just a little bit too tight. Okay, that means I'll take off maybe a thousandth of an inch. Okay, I've made one more very slight pass here, and wanted to get the camera out of the way so I could see what I was doing really good. Let's see what we got now. Well, it's better, but it's still too tight. I could probably force it on, but then I risk cracking this. That'd be stupid. Okay, it's had one more pass and a light sanding. See what we've got now. I think that's pretty good. I think that's really good. Yeah, that's going to be just great. Okay, now what I can do is I can just part it off up against the back here and then make another tenon out of this piece. I think you can see what I'm trying to do. Then I'll cut it off right there and I'll have two bushings.